Miles to Go, Chapter 42. There are two kinds of suffering in this life, that which pursues us and that which we doggedly pursue. Alan Christopherson's Diary. The next week of walking took us through St. Regis, Clark Fork, Missoula, Drummond, and Phosphate on our way to Butte. With each day we spent together, Kaylami and I grew more comfortable with each other, and though she opened up more to me, she still never talked about her past, which I grew a little more curious about each day. There weren't many amenities along this stretch, and we camped every night in our tent except for the night at Clark Fork, where we had an unexpected dinner invitation next to a river at a fishing area called St. John's. The sign at the entrance specified, "No overnight camping." The sign below it named and showed fish that could be found in the river: bull trout, rainbow trout, brown trout, West Slope cutthroat trout. Around twilight, we took a slight detour from the road, and we were walking down by the river when a man stuck his head out the back door of a camper. "Have you eaten yet?" I looked over. "Excuse me? Have you eaten yet?" "No." "Come on then, I'm just putting it on." Kaylami looked at me and I shrugged. "I guess it's time to eat," I said. The man opened his camper door for us to enter. "Watch your step," he said. He took Kaylami's hand and helped her up. I followed after her, shutting the narrow door behind me. The camper was comfortable, not old but well used, set in the back of a Ford pickup truck. It had a refrigerator, stereo, television, gas stove, and oven, a formica-topped table, and several cushions on which to sit or sleep. Our host was tall, maybe a few inches over 6 feet, with thinning reddish-brown hair. He was dressed as an outdoorsman, wearing a flannel shirt and a fishing vest with fishing flies attached. "I'm frying up some rainbow and brown," he said. "Pulled my limit this afternoon, so there's plenty to eat. Make yourself at home. There's room around the table." "Sounds good," I said, trying to look amiable. I could tell that Kaylami didn't know what to make of the situation or our host. The man knew his way around a fish, deboning them with his pocket knife with such ease I guessed he could have done it blindfolded. Watching him reminded me of some time back when Mikhail brought home a trout from the neighborhood, Safeway. My father wasn't an outdoorsman, and he never took me fishing or hunting, so I wasn't sure what to do with the fish. "I thought you were a Boy Scout," Mikhail said. "A long, long time ago," I said, adding, "in a galaxy far, far away, and I never had to debone a fish." "Didn't you camp in the wilderness?" she said. "Yes." "What did you eat?" "Mostly Pop-Tarts," I replied. "Figures," she said. The man sliced a raw fish cleanly down its gut, then flat back one side of it and peeled out the spine with every bone intact. He dropped the waste into a plastic shopping sack hanging from a cabinet doorknob. Then he cut off the fish's head and tail, dropped them in a separate bag, and started on another fish. "What do you do with those?" Kaylami asked, pointing to the second bag. "It's for the cats," he said. When all the fish was filleted, he combined them all in a brown bag filled with pancake batter, shook it up, then laid the fish 2 at a time in a skillet of boiling grease until they were light brown and crispy. He dished them onto paper plates for us along with some pork and beans. "You're welcome to eat in here," the man said, opening the camper door. "I prefer to eat outside." I looked at Kaylami. "I'm cold," she said. "You can stay inside," I said. "I'll go out." I took my plate and followed the man out the back of the camper. He was already seated in a fold-up chair facing the river. "Pull up a chair," he said, motioning to an identical chair leaning against the truck. I flipped it open with one hand, then sat down next to him. I cut into the trout with my fork and took a bite. It was tender inside and sweet. "It's delicious," I said. "Everything tastes better outdoors," he said. I took another bite. Living in Seattle, I've eaten at some of the finest seafood restaurants in America, but I'd never tasted fish so good. "You know, I didn't catch your name." "Great, isn't it? Not getting all mixed up in names and brands, just being. Out here, names are superfluous. It's how it should be." Frankly, I'd always thought that names were a pretty good idea, but after his diatribe, I didn't dare ask him his name nor offer mine. He took a pipe from his vest, then a book of matches. He held a lit match over the pipe's bowl and sucked in the flame. When the pipe was lit, he threw the match on the ground, inhaled deeply, and slowly blew it out. He asked, "Have you been walking long?" "A while. I started in Seattle." "That is a walk. Where are you going?" "Key West." He looked at me skeptically. "Really?" "Yes, sir." He sucked on his pipe. "I've spent some time in the Keys, fishing marlin, home of Papa Hemingway, Tennessee Williams, and Jimmy Buffett." "I take it you do a lot of fishing," I said. "You might say that." "Where are you from?" "In my former life, Queens." "Queens, New York?" I asked. He nodded. "How long have you been married?" 7 years, I said, wondering how he knew I'd been married. 7, huh? Don't they have laws against marrying minors in Seattle? You mean... Since we weren't using names, I pointed with my thumb to the camper. She's just a walking buddy. My wife passed away about 6 years ago. Sorry to hear it. He took a long draw on his pipe. I had a wife once. I lost her too. That's all he said. After a minute, I asked, She died? Our marriage died. He looked at me. I murdered it with work. Where did you work? I worked for a company called Young and Rubicam. I didn't expect that. Young and Rubicam is one of the largest and most prestigious advertising agencies in the world. You are in advertising? You've heard of it then, he said, not looking altogether happy that I had. I used to be in advertising myself, I said. What'd you do? Client services, account management, whatever they're calling it these days. I was over the Chanel account. It's a huge account. $150 million, he said slowly. You don't have an account like Chanel. It has you. I was always gone. Anniversaries, neighborhood parties, birthdays, my father-in-law's funeral, my wife became a stranger. I could tell you precisely what perfumes American women were wearing in any city in America, in any demographic, but I couldn't tell you what kind of flowers my wife liked. I couldn't even tell you what kind of perfume she liked. One day I came home early from a business trip and found her with another man. He was terrified. I'm sure he thought I was going to kill him in a jealous rage. He said, I didn't know she was married, honest. My wife said, Then you've got something in common with my husband. He shook his head. Gotta hand it to her. That was pretty clever under the circumstances. She always had a quick wit. I wasn't sure what to say. We divorced, of course. Quit my job, bought the truck, and started fishing. He set his plate on the ground. I'm guessing your wife never wanted to leave. I looked out over the river. No, she would have stayed. I turned back to him. Did you ever try to fix things with your wife? When I got over my rage, I asked her to stay. I even told her I'd quit my job, but it was too late. I had a small agency in Seattle. I worked a lot too, but my wife was involved, at least as much as she cared to be. That can't happen at a big agency, he said. No, it couldn't, I agreed. He blew out a cloud of smoke. I think I was addicted to the stress. I've seen that happen, I said. Stress is like a drug. It will kill you as well. I looked at him. That's why you fish. That's why I fish. He took another long draw on his pipe, then let it out slowly. What are you going to do when you reach Key West? Well, I don't know. Eat some key lime pie? He started laughing, almost imperceptibly at first. Then it grew until he almost doubled over. Key lime pie, he said. Eat some key lime pie. By the time we finished eating, it was dark. Thank you for dinner, I said. We better get going. We still need to make camp. Where are you camping tonight, he asked. I'm not sure. The first campground we come to. That will be a while, he said. There's nothing round here. You're welcome to stay with me. There's a couple bunk beds in back. I can sleep up in the cabin. I thought there was no overnight camping. I'm not camping, he said. I'm parking. Spun like an ad, man, I thought. I slept in a bunk that hung over the truck's cabin, and Kaylami slept on cushions above the table. She was still a little apprehensive about our host, and after I turned out the lights, she whispered to me, You don't think he's like a serial killer or something, do you? No, I whispered back. Worse. What? He's an ad man. I was just about asleep when Kaylami said, 2 muffins are in an oven, and one says to the other, Sure is hot in here. The other shouts, Holy cow! A talking muffin!